The most common and easiest to find nowadays example of the formation of a torus from a vapid substance in a less dense media are smoke rings, a form of vape trick performed by exhaling a breath of smoke through the lips held in a ring while clucking the tongue. The end result is a swirling circle of smoke in the form of a tube torus, a self-connecting vortex. Smoke rings have occasionally been cited emitted from volcanic activity, while so-called lenticular or saucer-shaped clouds are known to form over tectonic fissures. Again, tribal peoples used smoke signals as a method of long-distance communication, and the hotboxing rituals of the Native American sweat lodges may have been an indication for the original use of the divine mastabas of the Giza necropolis as chambers of initiation. But rings of smoke in air are not the only example of the tube torus we may find now in the world around us. Dolphins, with their uniquely suited blowholes, have been recorded blowing playful bubble rings or air toroids that seemingly hover along in the water wherever the dolphin chooses to aim them, and at whatever speed. Fun and entirely harmless, the dolphins occasionally gulp down the bubble rings, only to blow the air back out again in another. Just as smoke rings can be used to study toroidal shapes using vaporous media, bubble rings can be used to model the same physical properties in a completely fluid media. They obey the exact same laws of physics, those governing motions in any thermodynamic medium, and, as such, the toroid form should be considered native to the domain of thermodynamic media. The inarguably ultimate example of a smoke ring or vapor torus was the Soviet Tsar Bomba hydrogen test bomb, dropped on October 30th, 1961. This weapon had a yield of 50 megatons, weighed 27 metric tons, and, once dropped from an altitude of 10.5 kilometers above the Arctic Ocean, was designed to detonate at a height of 4.2 kilometers above sea level. The resultant mushroom cloud measured a base of 40 kilometers, a cap with peak width of 95 kilometers, and towered to a maximum height of 64 kilometers, 7 times the height of Mount Everest, and above the altitude of Earth's stratosphere. The blast radius flattened the town of Severne, 55 kilometers away from ground zero, and the radiation from the blast caused third-degree burns as far away as 100 kilometers from ground zero. So, whether it is as simple smoke rings in a vaporous medium, as bubble rings in a fluid medium, or as the cap of a mushroom cloud explosion, what we are looking at in all these models is basically a tube torus, obeying the standard geometric rules for the topography of a tube torus, that being that a spiral maps onto its exterior surface. This spiral unfurls over time to form a vortex. A vortex occurs through the core of a torus. The measure of a vortex is that of a tube torus extended in the additional direction of time. A tube torus already being a model for a four-space hyperdimensional object, the idea of extending it into an additional direction to symbolize its changing topography over time may seem redundant, but the sinusoidal spiral pattern that doing so extrapolates from the tube torus accounts for its significance nonetheless. Thus, this vortex line is a spiral extracted from the involuting topology of a tube torus and extended over time. Given certain atmospheric conditions involving the rising and falling of hot and cold air along a storm front between a high and low pressure center, an average thunderstorm can quickly become a hurricane-force gale, and, particularly in large, wide open spaces, can also form tornadoes. Such cyclones or twisters are, put simply, a vortex of high-speed wind capable of lifting objects, including people, and even whole buildings, and sending them flying through the air to land somewhere else as the serpentine whirling storm meanders and careens about until its impetus, the moist wind inside itself, subsides. Scientific storm chasers seek to predict, record, and study this phenomenon, which occurs most commonly in the American Midwest in so-called Tornado Alley. The same funneling vortex form can occur in a fluid medium, as occasionally occurs in the winds of the air, when certain given current and tidal conditions correspond, such as an unplugged drain hole at the bottom of a basin full of water, or such as a particular kind of wake left behind a trolling motorboat. These both create a whirlpool or underwater vortex. In a whirlpool, water rushes in a spiral from its surface height rapidly down a funnel vortex into a seemingly bottomless pit. The combination of the sinusoidal spiral vortex line model with the downward funneling cone-shaped medium forming a corkscrew pattern around the vortex should be beginning to become clear. While vortices comprised of air and of water exist in nature, leave it to humankind to invent an upward spiraling vortex made of flame using a circle of rotating fans, a metal bucket full of gasoline, a kitchen match, and a camera. Shown here alternately at real-time speed and slowed down by a few 100%, the corkscrewing pattern of the upward spiraling vortex of flame is apparent, and results, obviously, from the effect of the fans creating a circle of wind around it. Because the fans all blow in clockwise rotation, from a perspective in front of one, the corkscrewing spiral undulating upward around the pillar of fire also takes on a relative clockwise pattern, as seen from underneath looking up. So we see from the natural examples for cyclonic vortices of air called tornadoes, of water spiraling down a drain forming a tiny whirlpool, a miniature replica of the same effect in a fluid medium of the compressed vortex as a flattened spiral, a weather pattern seen from space, and even in the contrail jet wash from airplane engines, which leaves behind it a disturbance to the air identical in form to the disturbance made to water by wake from the trolling motor of a boat. A vortex is the pattern formed by a toroid over time, and the flattened shape of the torus itself is a spiral. One spiraling vortex forms a conical funnel down from above, and another upward from below, and these meet in the centroid core of the tube torus. Any force disturbing the inertia of a fluid medium will create a vortex in that medium. A wave front rolling up along the beach is merely an uncoiling vortex, an unfurling torus. Likewise, the wind blowing through the thin air is only a wave as well, an undulating, forward surge defined by its involuting undertow, its churning toroidal crest, and its elongated vortex wavefront. The torus is also the shape predicted using computer modeling as underlying the orbital patterns of the stars in a spiral galaxy, because, as stated, a spiral is a flattened version of the torus shape. The first perturbation of an unperturbed galaxy, comprised of a multitude of stars all arranged in concentric circular orbits, transforms it into a two-armed spiral galaxy shape, comprised of the same multitude of stars, only with their orbital patterns warped into a dual twisted Mobius strip. Anywhere there is a spiral accretion disk surrounding the equator of a rotating central sphere, This spiral should be seen as a cross-section of a torus with the central sphere at its core. One vortex above the core and another below it expand outward conically to curve back around on each other in a vast arc, forming the shape of the tube torus. While the examples of naturally occurring vortices in terrestrial elemental conditions prove the spiral, torus, and vortex forms are, at least, native to this planet, the presence of the same patterns in the atmospheric weather on other planets, let alone of them underlying the entire volume of our galaxy as well, should indicate to us the universality of this pattern. Not only do spiral, toroidal, and vortex-shaped patterns arise in the currents of air and water on our own planet Earth, perhaps forming here only due to some unique trait of our dihydrogen monoxygen atmosphere, but they appear in the cloud formations of storms on Mars and Venus, and even the red spot of Jupiter is a foaming toroidal circumference. This pattern is proven universally ubiquitous by its example in spiral galaxies, and here the spiral, torus, and vortex patterns are currents in a medium of the universal element of gravity. So, if mankind can harness the vortex in the media of our own natural terrestrial elements, creating a spiraling tornado of fire using only a ring of fans, and, as in a commercial art fountain design called Charybdis, creating a similar vortex out of water, then how long will it be before humanity harnesses the pattern of the vortex to tame the universal elements? Fusion, fission, electromagnetism, and gravity. As we have already seen, the cap of the mushroom cloud of an atomic explosion mimics the pattern of an involuting torus. This effect occurs due to the atomic bomb's detonator device being triggered by an atomic implosion. The detonator device, when triggered, collapses inward on itself from all sides at once, and this sets off a nuclear chain reaction that, in turn, results in a massive explosion. If an implosive detonation causes a tube torus pattern, just as a ring array of fans can create a vortex of wind, then the question is not if we will ultimately use this type of technology to manipulate the natural forces of the cosmos further, but when. Already we see combinations of domes, spheres, toroids, and vortices being depicted in science fiction models as futuristic designs for tapping the cosmic forces more efficiently. So what further role might the patterns of the spiral, the tube torus, and the vortex coil have left to play in the experimental development of fusion, fission, electromagnetic, and even gravitational technologies? In his drafting and construction of Wardenclyffe Tower in Shoreham, Long Island, New York, from 1901 to 1917, Nikola Tesla took into account geometric patterns that, until the site of the Trinity test by the Manhattan Project in 1945, would not be seen again. His presciently mushroom-shaped antenna array remains the model for Echelon's satellite dish domes to this day. A spherical, or toroidal, top load in Tesla's model will broadcast any medium of energy in all or only in controlled directions, respectively. The Nesta globe, commissioned by Simon Tegela and built by James Designs, shows a form of fluid dynamic perpetual motion machine using principles of design similar to a traditional hourglass. An 800 millimeter diameter acrylic globe containing 250 liters of deionized water is connected to a second hidden tank in its pedestal, with a nozzle between them that funnels the water draining back and forth into a vortex. This simple commercial art water fountain design may lead to further, even more important designs in the future, once humanity has learned to channel the elemental forces of the cosmos as we have the elemental forces of our planet. Until then, however, Tesla's schematics for copper wire coiled around toroidal magnets being used to broadcast wireless electricity, let alone the use of identical models capable of warping light speed by applying relativistic motors to focus gravity wells, remain only a pipe dream for quixotic backyard inventors and garage engineers. At present, the so-called Vortex math movement is in the phase Thomas Edison was in when he once quipped, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." In the near future, however, particularly if partnered further with those interested in the Venus Project and creating self-sustaining, energy-efficient communities, the present experiments with electrical amplifiers using wires coiled in Roden-Powell configurations can, in theory, yield a new age where the study of such patterns as circles, spirals, spheres, tube toroids, and vortices will become a branch of study in all fields of applied sciences, ultimately able to retool the automotive industry by redesigning the modern model for a car into a lenticular form, replacing the engine, the propulsion system, the wheels, and even the shape of the car's body itself with designs based on those geometric patterns. When a sphere is brought into interaction with a vortex, as with a ping-pong ball floating on the surface of water, caught into a whirlpool in the water, the sphere's reaction is to take on more or less regularized rotation around a bipolar axis. In other words, the presence of a vortex pattern in the media near a spherical mass can induce the mass to spin. This simple premise alone should be enough to inspire further applications and designs for motive machines making use of the spiral, the torus, and vortex patterns. Not only modern cyclotrons and antenna dishes should be being based on these geometric patterns, but the designs for other types of engines and machines should be as well. CERN's LHC, near Geneva, being a ring array of a long tunnel, mimics the shape of the torus using magnets to control the trajectories of lead ions. However, whatever is intended to be discovered by such a method has yet to be demonstrated, and so what plans for how to use whatever may one day be discovered using such methods remains an open-ended question as well. If humanity must prove itself worthy of free energy, and even anti-gravity technology, before attaining these goals, our great test will be nuclear disarmament. All that matters is if we will be willing to beat our swords into plowshares.